What is the point of retirement? No, seriously. Is it to just no longer work and just be able to put your feet up on the coffee table and lounge back in your favorite couch or recliner for the last 10 to 20 years of your life? Is it just to sit around and just eat whatever you want, do whatever you want, and not have to answer to anybody anymore? And if this is the lifestyle that you do want, is that something that you could even afford? Is that something that you have enough money saved up to? And also, we don't know when our last day or hour is on this planet. So how do you really figure out exactly how much you even need to save up to be able to have this life of relaxation? These are serious questions that baby boomers are asking themselves these days. With the cost of almost everything going up, I mean, how much money do you actually have to put away to have this ride off into the sunset, this slow, gentle ride into the sunset? And I'll never forget that my grandmother once told me, what am I really supposed to do? All my friends are dead. Because at some point, all the friends, all the loved ones around you are also going to pass away, and that could lead to a lot of loneliness, isolation, and unfortunately sometimes depression. So what does an ideal retirement really look like, especially in 2024? I have an article I want to go over with you today and really dive into what baby boomers are doing in retirement and how it might be different than you imagine. Let's dive in. Our article today is from Yahoo Finance, and the title is "The New Retirement is No Retirement. Baby boomers are keeping jobs well into their 60s and 70s because they like going to work." And the article says, at 73, George Cavadon could be spending his days on a golf course in Florida with friends who have long been retired. But the New Hampshire resident would rather mentor younger coworkers and chat up clients than measure putts on a green. Cavadon tried out retirement in his 50s and quickly discovered it wasn't for him. The flexibility was nice, but he was soon bored with spending his days puttering around the house and missed the camaraderie of a workplace. He likes to ski and golf, but could only spend so much time on those two hobbies. Plus, his wife and kids had their own routines, often leaving him alone. So he decided to pursue a second career, this time in marketing, at a small firm. He's been there for 18 years and has no intention of taking his foot off the gas anytime soon. Retirement to me is a scary thing. How much can you lay on the beach? For my own personal mental health and well-being, I like being active and working. So this is certainly one breed of folks who are of retirement age right now. And it's a certain person where they just don't want to just sit back and relax. And really, I've seen countless times and countless examples of people who work very, very hard, and then they finally get to retirement. And I mean, what are they really doing with their lives? They're just sitting around watching TV, not really accomplishing much. Definitely not, quote unquote, contributing anymore to society, really. So is that really how you want to spend your last decade or so on this earth? Most people would probably say no. So the key for a lot of people is maybe you can have some really nice hobbies, but if the hobbies are kind of shallow, like golfing or, I don't know, playing bingo, who knows, but maybe that's not enough. So it seems like this gentleman, one of the main things he did is volunteering or like mentoring younger people. Now that at least is rewarding. You're able to finally give back and have time to do that. Maybe it's volunteering at a church or a charity that you really believe in. I mean, there's other things you could do that are maybe more fulfilling than just, golfing or shuffleboard or something of that nature, where you might not need to actually, quote unquote, work anymore. And then another thing is maybe you just want to switch careers. You've made all the money that you need to make from your very high paying, maybe stressful, time consuming, bad for your mental health job, and now you can do something you're more passionate about at maybe a pay cut. So he seemed to do both of those things of switching careers to something he enjoyed much more. I'm not sure if it was a pay cut or not, but most likely if he didn't have the experience starting out there. And then he also was able to mentor and give back a little bit more in his, not even retirement for this example, right? It's more like a second career. The article goes on to say that Cavadon is part of a growing number of baby boomers, many of whom are college educated, who continue to work well past 65. not because they can't afford to retire, but simply because they love their work and don't want to give it up. In fact, the number of those who have continued to work past 65 has quadrupled since the 1980s, according to the Pew Research Center. Now, almost 20% of Americans 65 and older are employed, nearly double the share of those who were working 35 years ago. In total, there are around 11 million Americans 65 or older who are working today, accounting for 7% of all wages and salaries paid by U.S. employers. In 1987, they made up only 2%. And something we talk about all the time is that young people or people who are switching careers or people who maybe don't have as much quote unquote experience, according to HR people, are really struggling to get jobs right now. And I think you have to admit that one of the factors why certain people can't get jobs anymore is because of the baby boomers not really retiring. And in this case, this guy went from one career to another, but I mean, he spent 18 years. I mean, that's a little bit deceptive. But let's say there's a situation where a baby boomer would retire at 50 and open up those jobs to somebody else. I don't know, maybe they saved up to 50, maybe. And then, they could ride off into the sunset. Well, if those same people are like basically working until they die at 65 or 70, then that's another 15, 20 years where that job is not going to be available for the next generation. So having to wait around for baby boomers to retire could definitely be one reason why people can't switch careers or can't get certain jobs. The article goes on to say, and as Pew's research also shows, for many of those older Americans, they work not just for the money, but like Calvadon, for the camaraderie as well as the mental stimulation. I go on my vacations. I do what I want to do, he says. I get up in the morning and I have a place to go. That's what I like. I like going to work. Which, yeah, part of it is if you actually do enjoy what you do for a living, I mean, I guess there's not a big motivating factor to leave it. Not everyone's gonna be like me or other people who just absolutely dread going to work every single week, get the Sunday scaries, and are really just doing it for work, for money, and be able to, pay the bills. But if you truly do find a job that you enjoy, then good on you. But also in this scenario, this guy wasn't working the same thing his entire career. He spent 18 years doing the thing he loved. So maybe the lesson there is do what you got to do for a while, but then when you have the opportunity to switch careers, switch industries, do that, and maybe you won't hate your job so much. The article goes on to say, a much higher portion of baby boomers have college degrees compared with generations before them and have worked less physically taxing jobs. This first generation of knowledge workers is contributing to a huge exponential shift in America's economy. They are transforming professional and executive career trajectories and what they may look like for generations to come. And then the article talks about a study from 2 psychologists that looked at the experiences of 1,500 retirees and 400 people of the same age who were still working. The study found that only around 44% of the retirees were happy with their lives. The others, more than half of those surveyed, reported feeling some combination of loneliness, emptiness, and hopelessness. The more successful you've been, especially financially, the more likely you are to feel like a failure in retirement. What kind of a person doesn't want to have money and be retired? Turns out there's a certain kind of person. They've been in careers. They're very curious and very competitive. As the U.S. grapples with what the future of work will look like, this group of baby boomers is claiming its stake, and in the process reshaping workplaces and societal expectations. Yeah, and that I think is one of the main issues with having to work so much. I mean, some of you guys tell me in the comments that the real money is when you finally work 90 hours to 100 hours a week. Well, if you are working an ungodly amount of hours like that, yeah, you might be making money, but do you really have time for anything personal? I mean, I don't see you have time for friends, relationships, anything like that if you're working that many hours a week. Even if you're just working maybe 40 hours a week, that's not too terribly bad, but I don't know of any good paying jobs that only require you to work 40 hours a week anymore. And then from there, you don't really have much time for actual hobbies or to find out what you really like, what you really enjoy. And then a lot of people don't even take their PTO, so you don't know if you like other cities, states, countries, because you're not spending any time to travel. You're maybe not giving yourself time to pursue passions, hobbies, other interests. So by the time you get to your retirement years, if you spent your whole working career just working and not doing anything else, I mean, of course it kind of feels empty and lonely because that's all you've known. But if you've had a healthy work-life balance where you're able to do the things you enjoy and still make enough money to pay all of your bills, then I think you'd ease into retirement a lot easier. The article goes on to say, at first blush, working longer might not seem like such a positive change. There is a pervasive fear among younger generations in the US that they may never retire at all, not because they're so passionate about their work, but because they won't be able to afford it. Their fear isn't completely unfounded. Gen X and younger will have different financial outcomes than baby boomers, thanks to the decrease in pensions and a larger reliance on personal savings for retirement that started with Gen X and kicked into higher gear with millennials and Gen Z. Articles and studies abound about the lack of savings and retirement preparedness in the US. Long-held perceptions of work also are changing among younger generations. While college-educated boomers may find much of their identity and purpose at their 9 to 5, that mindset is shifting. The article also says that America's retirement crisis is serious and sad. There is a significant portion of the population who can't afford to retire, and poverty among elderly Americans has been on the rise. And the reality is that baby boomers are going to face a much different scenario around retirement than millennials like myself and others are going to be facing because, yeah, I don't think that there's really any way that we're really going to be able to retire and have a lot of government assistance. Hopefully I'm wrong, and maybe this is just fear tactics to get us to spend more money with financial advisors and pay all these extra fees. I really don't know, but I don't really know of anybody talking about the fact that once someone around their 40s retires, that they're going to be able to actually get all this amazing money from Social Security, because all we hear about is how the government is draining our Social Security funding, and you see how much and how often the age of getting full retirement is pushed back. So really, by the time a 40-year-old retires, you might not be able to retire with full Social Security benefits, whatever that number looks like, until, I don't know, what, 80, 85? I mean, I know we have technology out and medicine out that's helping people live longer, but you really shouldn't have to officially retire in your 80s. You should be able to retire a lot before then. And then there's the issue of when you're in your 50s, historically, that's when a person makes their biggest chunk of money. That's when they are paid the highest. And now we're seeing report after report of people over 50 getting laid off, people over 50 not getting hired. We see age discrimination and things like that. And so I don't know. I really don't know how I'm going to retire unless I do a really good job saving and investing, because between Social Security benefits being dwindled down and being pushed back, and the fact that once I hit 50, I might no longer be able to get a job. I mean, if it's as hard as it is now, I might never get a job again, but it's just things are not looking good, and there's definitely the writing on the wall that we have to figure out something else in my generation to be able to retire at all one day. The article goes on to say, but there is also a growing contingent who refuses to retire, even well past the age many workers have typically been considered less productive or valuable. And that change is refreshing. Boomers are flipping the script on an ageist work culture that might have forced them out in the past, and still does in many cases, while more companies are recognizing they can provide invaluable experience and expertise and can mentor younger workers. That is empowering, not cause for alarm. And I don't know what kind of work environment they're looking at, but if we can all agree that training has mostly disappeared in the corporate world, then I don't think they're going to care about mentoring younger people. These organizations don't seem to care if the people they hire know anything at all. They just want them to be cheap, affordable, and that's it. If they could do their job, fine, but the main thing is to cut their costs and their expenses as much as possible. So I don't know if they're going to hire more experienced people just to train the younger staff, because I don't think most of these organizations care about training at all. It says humans are living longer than ever, and many more have enjoyed long careers in offices compared with the physically taxing work more common in the factories in previous generations. Though working longer doesn't appeal to everyone, it may be necessary in some cases. The reality is there is a labor shortage, and the labor shortage is a shortage of highly skilled, highly knowledgeable employees. It could always be predicted that the time would come when companies would have to find experienced professionals and couldn't find them among younger people. There simply isn't enough of them. And we've talked about this a couple of different times where we've read studies where employers say that workers lack critical skills to do the jobs, where employers say they can't find quality workers. So maybe there is this idea in a lot of employers' mind that maybe with someone in their 60s, they have enough knowledge and expertise to be able to do the job, but maybe people in their 20s or 30s are just, I don't know, mindless, clueless, have no idea what's going on. But that would line up with other things that we're seeing. But it also comes down to cost. So if you can get someone in their 60s who maybe came out of retirement and doesn't really care how much they get paid, they're just looking for something to do that's going to stimulate their minds, maybe that's a win-win. I've got decades ahead of me. A hard stop retirement, there today, gone tomorrow, can be especially difficult for retirees to manage. Work takes up a significant portion of many people's lives, and after 40 plus years, making the abrupt switch to completely unstructured days without the built-in social interaction is hard on many people. More companies are creating other options for older workers. So-called phased retirement allows workers to gradually reduce their hours, go part-time, or switch to contractor status, among other arrangements. Workers maintain an income and get to keep doing the work they love, but more on their own terms. I mean, yes, of course, employers would love that. Oh, you want to work less hours, so we have to pay you less? Great. Oh, you want to be part-time, so now we don't have to pay you any sort of health insurance or benefits or any sort of other perks or incentives? Fantastic. So if you could get someone with all this expertise at part-time, you're saving a lot of money. The article says that that's the hope of Renee Stanton, 61, who has worked in IT-adjacent roles her entire career. While Stanton could afford to retire, she enjoys what she does and has no desire to leave the workforce completely. She just wants some flexibility to go skiing and sailing, her lifelong passions, during the on-seasons, and to spend more time with her adult children and aging parents. Stanton says while retirement sounds nice, she learned a lesson from her father, a cabinet maker who retired in his early 60s. Still going strong and still retired at 87, his one regret is leaving the workforce too soon, she says. Which is interesting because every guru we hear says, you know, when people are on their deathbed, they will never regret not spending more hours at work. Well, homeboy over here is. He says he wishes he worked more. I don't think that's going to be a regret of mine, but apparently there's at least one person who regrets not working longer. And that's just where that quote ends. I mean, there's more to her story, but it should have been like, oh, he regrets working longer because he wishes he had, some more money, or he invested his money in different ways, or something. It's just like, oh, he wishes he worked longer. That's just a nice sound bit, even though we don't really know the reason behind that. It says Renee's plan is to eventually move to a contractor role. That way she could work throughout the shoulder seasons on her own terms, and then take time off when she's skiing or sailing, or work remotely from the mountain cabin she rents in the winter. So somebody's working remotely, that's nice. She has decades of experience to offer. She just wants to control the spigot of when and where she works. In an ideal world, she'll be able to ski or catch waves in the morning and work a little in the afternoons, giving her that intensity and enrichment she also craves. I've got decades of work ahead of me. Knock on wood, I'm funding my ski addiction now. So what do you think about this? According to my YouTube analytics, most of you guys are somewhere between 35 and 50, so most people most likely won't be at the retirement age, but as people who are still working in their careers and still saving up for retirement, do you dread going to retirement? Do you think that you're going to leave good working years on the table? Or, do you think that once you get retirement age, you're not going to really have a purpose or much to really accomplish, and maybe get lonely and feel kind of isolated from the rest of the world? Do you even think that retirement is going to be an option? Do you think that you might not have enough saved up and you might just have to work until the day you fall over into the ground. I mean, let me know what you think, because it's interesting to hear that people have made it to the age of retirement. They're most likely able to get a fair amount from Social Security, so there's some government assistance there, and they're still choosing not to retire, to stay into the workforce. And it seems like from the people interviewed, there's some baby boomers out there who really enjoy their careers and don't have any aspirations to leave anytime soon. So let me know what you think, because to some baby boomers, the best retirement is no retirement at all. Talk to you later.